Life threw a curveball my way recently. I, a 29-year-old woman, got a call from my estranged mother after almost 5 years of silence. Turns out she needed my help. My younger sister, Melissa, let's call her that, and her husband were facing a personal tragedy. But here's the kicker. This husband was supposed to be mine. Back in the day, Melissa was 27 at the time, hooked up with my fiance, Lucas, on my engagement day. Lucas and I had been together since college sweethearts, you could say. After nearly 5 years, he popped the question with a surprise party. I was ecstatic. Picture perfect, right? Until 1 p.m. Needing better reception, I stepped into the backyard. There they were, Melissa and Lucas, entangled in a passionate make-out session. It took them a beat to even notice me standing there, mouth agape. Betrayal stabbed me. After all these years, on our engagement night no less, they finally saw me and scrambled apart. Too late. I bolted, jumped in my car, and drove like a bat out of hell to the nearest hotel. Hyperventilating, I wrestled with what I'd just seen. Denial gnawed at me, hoping it was some twisted nightmare. Then came the text. Melissa, owning up to it, confessed she was in love with Lucas, and apparently, it wasn't a recent thing. The hotel room became my haven as I crumbled. Soon after, a text from Lucas arrived, mirroring Melissa's. He claimed he proposed out of obligation, hoping commitment would banish Melissa from his thoughts. It backfired, fueling his desire for her instead. He said it wasn't about me, but about them, some destined love story. I was just a placeholder, a bridge to Melissa. For days, I holed up in that hotel, trying to piece together the wreckage of my life. It felt like a cruel cosmic joke. Finally, after 4 agonizing days, I forced myself to head home and deal with reality. Work wouldn't wait forever. Arriving home, I was met with a sight that would have been heartwarming under different circumstances. My estranged family, with Lucas under their roof, waited for my return. Turns out, everyone tried bombarding me with texts after my vanishing act, but I was drowning in emotional turmoil to even consider responding. Needless to say, this family reunion was anything but joyous. The reunion was a chaotic mess. Hugs were thrust upon me from all sides, even Melissa offered one, her eyes brimming with regret. Disoriented, I stood there, a statue amidst the whirlwind of emotions. Finally, when the commotion subsided, I choked out my intention to pack my things and leave for good. Lucas, silent until now, spoke up. "There's no need for you to leave," he said. "I've already packed my bags. I'm moving in with Melissa." My family, faces aglow with a joy that seemed utterly misplaced, beamed their approval. Even my aunt, who had practically become a fixture in our house since her husband's passing, wore a wide, unsettling smile. Melissa, awkwardly huddled beside Lucas, managed a sad smile despite the situation. Rage bubbled within me. "What's so funny?" I demanded, my voice tight. "Melissa just destroyed my engagement, stole my boyfriend of 5 years. Where's the happy ending in this?" My mother, ever the pragmatist, stepped in. "We can't change the past, honey," she said gently. "But we can accept the future, and in that future, Lucas and Melissa are together." She acknowledged their infidelity with a hesitant, "It wasn't ideal, of course. But we want you to understand, to accept that this might be for the best." Disbelief turned to anger. "Melissa," I spat, my gaze fixed on her tear-filled eyes. "You took him away. How could you not tell me sooner? Apparently, your love is so strong you couldn't spare a single ounce of honesty?" Melissa, clutching Lucas's arm, choked back a sob. "I'm so sorry, your name. I fell for him, and there's nothing I could do. I wish things were different, but we're madly in love and want to be together." As if on cue, they sealed their newfound love with a kiss, right there in front of me. My mother, the picture of misplaced sentimentality, even wiped away a stray tear. The final straw. "This isn't a damn Hallmark movie," I yelled, my voice laced with disgust. "What you're doing is disgusting." Taken aback by my outburst, my family seemed to shift gears. Gone was the feigned acceptance, replaced by a flicker of annoyance. "Honestly, your name," my mother chastised, "you're being a brat. Can't you be happy for your sister?" The reunion unraveled into a bizarre spectacle. My outburst about leaving was met with surprising opposition. Lucas, with his bags packed, announced his move-in with Melissa. My family, faces plastered with smiles that felt more like smirks, seemed thrilled. Even my aunt, usually a pillar of reason, wore an unsettling grin. Melissa, awkwardly clinging to Lucas, offered a weak, tearful smile. Enraged, I questioned their bizarre cheer. Melissa stole my fiance. This isn't some heartwarming movie. My voice crackled with disbelief. My mother, ever the diplomat, tried to pacify me. Sweetie, the past is unchangeable. We can only accept the future, and that future includes Lucas and Melissa together. She acknowledged their infidelity with a hesitant, "It wasn't ideal, but try to understand. This might be for the best." Understanding morphed into fury. "Melissa," I spat, my gaze locking with hers, "you took him away. Why the secrecy? Was your love so fleeting you couldn't be honest?" Melissa, voice thick with emotion, choked out an apology. "I fell for him. Your name. There's nothing I could do. We're in love and want to be together." As if on cue, they shared a kiss, a public display of affection that felt like a cruel joke. The final straw. "This isn't a fairy tale." I roared, disgust dripping from my words. "This is disgusting." My outburst stunned them. The feigned acceptance vanished, replaced by annoyance. "Honestly, your name," my mother chastised. "You're being childish. Can't you be happy for your sister?" Their twisted perception left me speechless. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about betrayal and their blatant disregard for my pain. They wanted me to celebrate Melissa's happiness, built on the ruins of mine. It was madness. Packing a few essentials, I stormed out, ignoring their pleas. There was nothing left to say. Their actions spoke volumes. They cared more about Melissa's happiness than basic morals or my feelings. Blinded by justifications for Melissa's actions, they forgot I was a human being, not collateral damage. In the following weeks, their attempts to contact me were met with silence. I didn't owe them explanations. The wedding invitation for Melissa and Lucas landed in the rejection pile. My friends, loyal and supportive, followed suit. Even some relatives, disgusted by their behavior, cut ties. 5 years have passed. I've virtually erased them from my life. The occasional birthday or holiday well wishes are ignored. I haven't blocked them, but they've been removed from my social circles. My public profile serves as a window into my life, a life that thrives despite their betrayal. It's petty, but a small solace after the way they treated me. Until recently, I haven't even cared to know what they've been up to. The past 4 days had been blissfully quiet, a stark contrast to the jarring ring of an unknown number shattering the peace. Answering cautiously, I was met with my mother's voice, heavy with desperation. The urge to hang up was immediate, but her pleas snagged at my conscience. After all, turning a blind eye to someone in distress went against everything I believed in. Hesitantly, I agreed to a brief conversation. Apparently, a dire situation had unfolded. Melissa and Lucas, the couple whose happiness bloomed from the ashes of mine, were facing the consequences of their choices. Their self-made business was a sinking ship, hemorrhaging money and investors. Debt piled higher than ever. Loan sharks circled like hungry wolves, and everyone, employees, lenders, borrowers, hounded them relentlessly. My comfortable lifestyle wasn't a secret to my mother. Seeing me as their last hope, she revealed the staggering sum they needed, $75,000. My blood turned to ice. Where was Melissa in all this? Why wasn't she the one pleading for help? The answer was a gut punch: fear. They didn't want my pity, my charity. Facing me meant acknowledging the wreckage they'd left behind, a truth they couldn't bear. My mother, bless her heart, was at her wit's end. They'd exhausted every possibility. Family support, however generous, wasn't enough. This wasn't a temporary fix. They needed a lifeline, not a handout. The ability to help was undeniably there. Financially, it wouldn't break me. But a bitter part of me reveled in their misfortune. They'd forfeited the right to ask for anything the moment they betrayed me. Melissa's audacity, hiding their struggles and expecting a handout after everything, was infuriating. In a conversation laced with past betrayal, I informed my mother of my inability to help my sister and her husband, Melissa and Lucas. The revelation was met with a torrent of upset from my mother, who labeled my stance as cruel and demanded I consider the family unit. My response? A harsh reminder of the pair's disregard for my feelings when they embarked on their affair, a sentiment seemingly absent when my family rallied around them. Today, the tables were turned, and prioritizing their needs held no merit in my eyes. Reaching my current position wasn't a cakewalk. Years of dedicated effort had paved the way, and the thought of dropping $75,000 on undeserving individuals was unpalatable. The conversation then dipped into a tearful plea from my mother. Her voice, heavy with disappointment, painted me as a selfish individual, foreshadowing dire consequences if I refused to offer aid to my sister. My resolve remained unshaken. With a resolute no and a subsequent hang-up, the call ended. Since then, my phone has become a battleground bombarded with hourly texts from my mother. Each message implored me to reconsider, pleading for a sliver of compassion for my sister. The narrative she spun portrayed this as a time above petty revenge, a time when Melissa's very serious trouble demanded my immediate intervention. The undercurrent of emotional manipulation was undeniable, leaving me bewildered and uncertain on how to respond without succumbing to the guilt trip. The uncomfortable truth? I didn't want to be cast as the villain in this family drama. Update 1. The weight of their actions finally prompted me to block my entire family. Prior to this, I'd been hesitant for two reasons: a desire to fuel their envy with my success, and a lingering fear of future regret should something unforeseen befall them. Looking back, the decision to maintain contact feels like a foolish one. 5 years is a long time to hold on to a connection that ultimately proved toxic. Refusing their financial request feels justified. After all, their history of reckless spending speaks volumes. Even if I were to offer the money, the possibility of repayment seems dim. $75,000 is a significant sum, and while I'm fortunate enough to have it, the expectation of receiving it back is a fair one. With close friends, repayment wouldn't be a question. However, this situation involves individuals who no longer hold the status of loved ones, nor can I hold on to hope of recouping the funds. The logical conclusion? Extending financial help simply doesn't make sense. In a bid to garner unbiased opinions, I confided in a couple of friends about the situation. Their verdict? My refusal to dole out $75,000 was a sound decision. Revenge wasn't even a factor. The sheer impracticality of financially aiding those who had wronged me so deeply took precedence. With my mother successfully blocked, the relentless guilt trips had finally ceased, ushering in a period of welcome peace. Update 2. The day took an unexpected turn during my work hours. A frantic phone call from my neighbor shattered the calm. Apparently, a couple was outside my house, their screams echoing through the neighborhood, demanding my immediate presence. My neighbor, understandably shaken, described their erratic behavior, a relentless hour of yelling, punctuated by a refusal to leave. While the description lacked specifics, a chilling certainty washed over me. I knew exactly who it was. The details she provided confirmed my suspicions. A reunion with Melissa and Lucas was on the horizon. Worried about their intentions, my neighbor urged me to return and handle the situation. Her assessment resonated deeply. Where Melissa and Lucas were concerned, good intentions rarely factored into the equation. Expressing my gratitude, I hung up and embarked on a hurried drive home. The thought of them gaining entry was too much to bear. Thankfully, the 15-minute drive found me arriving just in time. The sight that greeted me was unnerving. They were actively attempting to bypass my security by picking the lock on my front door. Slamming on the brakes, I pulled into the driveway and demanded an explanation for their blatant disregard for private property. My attempt to call the police was thwarted by Lucas's lightning reflexes. He snatched the phone from my grasp, rendering it useless. Melissa, ever the charmer, interjected, assuring me their visit was purely for conversation's sake. Financial requests, she claimed, were not part of the agenda, at least not for the moment. Wary but eager to wrap this up, I instructed them to be brief and made it abundantly clear that any conversation would transpire outdoors. The confines of my home were strictly off limits. Surprisingly, they seemed agreeable, a relief considering the hostility radiating from them. Uncertain of their true motives, I braced myself as Melissa launched into her spiel. Apparently, my mother had filled her in on the aforementioned phone call, the ignored texts, and the ultimate act of defiance, blocking them all. In her opinion, my behavior was beyond the pale. 5 years, she insisted, was a sufficient amount of time to move past the betrayal. The conversation took a bizarre turn as Melissa attempted to spin my actions as a desperate cry for attention. Indignant, she declared her offense at my refusal to help, claiming that was the sole purpose of their visit. Apparently, they'd managed to secure the funds, for now. However, the future remained a looming dark cloud. Having exhausted their resources, selling their house and jewelry no less, they desperately sought a safety net, a financial lifeline I was expected to provide. My response was swift and unequivocal. No, they could not, under any circumstances, rely on me. The depth of my anger was palpable, so much so that restraining myself from physical retaliation took a Herculean effort. Their best course of action, I advised, was a hasty retreat. Lucas, displaying a breathtaking audacity, informed me of their refusal to leave until I signed a document guaranteeing future financial support. The absurdity of the situation was enough to make one's head spin. Coerced consent was not only unethical, but likely illegal. Their belief in my susceptibility to such blatant manipulation bordered on delusion. Exasperated, I barked a final order for them to leave, punctuated by a shove from Melissa. Family doesn't abandon responsibility. She shrieked, demanding my assistance. The audacity of her touch ignited a spark of fury, quickly extinguished by the knowledge that escalation would only worsen the situation. Instead, I snatched my phone, dislodged from my grasp by Lucas moments earlier, and bolted. A mad dash for my car ensued, the engine thankfully left running in my haste. No time for a leisurely rear-view mirror check. My priority was putting significant distance between them and me. Foot pursuit wasn't on their agenda, it seemed. They loitered around my house, a fact I discovered upon reaching a safe haven. With trembling hands, I dialed the police, recounting the events of the afternoon. A 20-minute drive brought me back home, just in time to witness the arrival of the police. The charges I knew wouldn't be earth-shattering, and they'd likely walk free soon. But for now, at least, they were gone, whisked away by the authorities, and my precious time was no longer theirs to waste. The hours ticked by, each one devoid of familiar voices or buzzing notifications from my family. A part of me expected a renewed barrage of calls or texts, perhaps disguised by unknown numbers. The silence, however, spoke volumes. Were they truly done, their attempts to manipulate me exhausted? Or perhaps they were simply biding their time, waiting for the heat of the moment to dissipate before launching another offensive. Update 3: a week had passed since my last chronicle, and a sliver of hope bloomed within me. Maybe, just maybe, the legal intervention had deterred my family from further intrusion. But hope, as always, proved a fickle friend. My peaceful solitude was shattered once more, this time by the unwelcome sight of my parents on my doorstep. Gone was the bravado I'd witnessed in Melissa and Lucas. A subdued air hung around them, a stark contrast to their previous arrogance. Hesitantly, I allowed them entry. My mother, tears glistening in her eyes, launched into a torrent of apologies. Never again, she swore, would she take Melissa's side over mine. My father chimed in, revealing that Melissa and Lucas's arrest, coupled with their physical aggression towards me, had irrevocably tarnished their image. A decision had been made. They were cutting Melissa and Lucas out of their lives. My mother's tears continued to flow as my father acknowledged their past misstep. They had sided with the wrong person, failing to recognize me as the true victim. Gratitude flickered within me for their belated realization, but the embers of resentment still glowed. Building a life based on self-sufficiency has become my norm. The dynamic where my family's needs superseded my own held no allure. While I appreciated their visit and apology, rebuilding the fractured relationship felt like a bridge too far. The effort of salvaging something so fundamentally broken, even with my parents, seemed pointless. Their protests about the potential for reconciliation fell on deaf ears. My desire was clear: solitude. With a touch of sadness in their eyes, they left, not before requesting my removal of their blocked numbers. My finger hovered over the button, a strange sensation accompanying the act of unblocking them.